In this episode I'll be talking to Rick Stanley from Ocean Quest Adventures. Over at BREW, Rick tells me about the adventures to be had with his dive centre out in Newfoundland that is steeped in marine life and history. Do you fancy a brew?
Voila! Here we are!
Cheers, mate. Didn't you have a tash last time I saw you?
Yeah, I did.
Where's it gone? You look 20 years younger.
I know, but the missus says the same thing, right? You got to try to stay sexy somehow.
So what have you been up to? You've been busy this afternoon, haven't you? Or this morning for you. I don't know. What time are we on now?
Oh, man, I tell you, I'm so far behind. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, they decided to haul the boats out today. So, because it was light winds. And we had a big old 80-ton crane. My boat is 38,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is, 19 ton. So we lifted her out. And, of course, then we're all there together, and then there was a few boats had a bit of problems, and we're helping them along with it. And anyway, one thing got to another, and I didn't realize the time. So mate, I apologize.
I appreciate your apology, because most of all, I need to thank you for something you don't probably realize you've even done for me. The last conversation me and you had, which was probably about 18 months ago over at the dive show, and we were talking about me and my wife coming out to see us to do some whale watching and iceberg watching and go diving on them wrecks that we'll touch on in a bit. But because of that conversation, I had a conversation with somebody else about needing some heated undergarments for coming diving there, because your water's phenomenally warm over there, isn't it? It's really warm.
Oh, yeah.
So one thing led to another, and I ended up trialing some gear for a local dive company called Northern Diver. And that sort of grew arms and legs into me starting YouTube and then starting this podcast, which has been life-changing, not financially, just it's given me inspiration to do something positive and be much more involved in the dive community than I ever was. So little did you know, but that conversation that me and you had 18 months ago really changed my life. So Rick, I really owe you a massive thanks.
Hey, cheers.
So cheers, mate. Thanks for coming. So what are you drinking? What is that brew? What's that brew?
This one is a remake of a German beer, an alt beer.
Right.
And it's Rhine Gold.
All right, that's pretty Rhine Gold, yeah.
Yeah, Rhine Gold. It's pretty smooth, not too strong. It's only 5%. But it's like the old good old German alt beer, a little brown, a
bit dark for me. I like the sort of paler ones, like an IPA. Purely because it looks more like lager to me, so I'm not so nervous of trying it.
Yeah, I like the bitters, the bitter IPAs, and the stronger ones, the double IPA. That's what I normally drink, but it's still early here, only 3 o'clock, and I got a bit of work to do. But to have a brew with you, Andy, it's a pleasure, man. What are you drinking?
I'm just on tea because I've got I've still got a lot of work to do, mate. And my mates all take the mick, because if I get on the proper brew beer like you've got there, I can only handle maybe 1 or 2 pints of that. I'm not a good drinker. Which is crazy, because they're not too strong if you compare them to like wine and gin, where I can drink a lot more of that. I don't know whether it's my constitution or what. We need to sort that out.
Yeah, well, we got some good old stuff over here. You probably had some at my booth. Was the Newfoundland Screech?
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to try that when you were at my booth?
I think somebody else helped you drink all that before I got there, because there was no Screech available.
Yeah, well, Gary Dallas was there, I do believe, and a few folks like that. They kept coming back for more.
That's probably what it was then. All right, should we get cracking then?
Yes.
So Rick Stanley, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast. If you can give us a little bit of a sort of intro to you, but not too many spoilers.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, well, I'm Rick Stanley. I started diving in 1992. 1997, roughly, I did my instructor program. And then a little while after that, I started doing technical diving. And around 2001, I did full cave. Shortly after that, I got into rebreathers. And but in 1997, we started our company Ocean Quest, and we started with a boat and a dream, I guess, and taking divers diving on the world-class shipwrecks called the Bell Island Shipwrecks, which are 4 wrecks out in Conception Bay here, only about 45 minutes from our dock. And then from that boat, we built it in baby steps, and we built a swimming pool on site. We also built the divers lodge. We built, we got more boats besides our dive boat. We got some Zodiac boats so that we can do some cooler things around different areas in remote places. And then we built after that a spa, and so we bought a bus, and so now we have this resort that we go pick people up at the airport and bring them to our resort. We take them diving, we immerse them into the culture, into the history and heritage, and of course the culinary scene is here is great, and we got lots of great craft beers
from a lovely place called Dildo.
Yes, and we do have that in Dildo. We have the Dildo Brewery, and so that's always a must on every trip, Andy.
I wonder what they stir the beer with.
Well, there are whale bones in Dildo, so we go out there, we dive on the whale bones, and this Dildo Brewery is not only a brewery, but it's also a museum. So who knows? They may stir the big old vats with a whale bone to give it a little bit extra flavor.
So, are you a native of where you are right now?
Yes, I am a native. Yeah, I'm a Newfoundlander, born and bred, and I'll be here till I die.
Okay. So, if I was to come out to Newfoundland, what am I going to expect? Different times of the years, and what can I do as a diver?
Yeah, well, when you come out of Newfoundland, we usually start up at the beginning of April when the icebergs float down from Greenland. And so it takes them a couple of years to float down. Of course, there's always a flow coming, especially now with climate change and more ice is breaking off the glaciers up there. But we dive on with icebergs, crystal clear water in the springtime, but it's cold. I expect temperatures of 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit, and at that time of year. But the visibility is spectacular, and of course, so that's in the springtime. Then in the summertime, the whales start showing up. So we have humpback whales, finback whales, minke whales. Sometimes we even have belugas, and there was once I even had the opportunity to dive with a narwhal. So we have the whales, and we swim with those gentle giants, and as part of our experiences that we offer. Then, of course, the water is warming up a little bit, but we have, like in the summertime here, there's a feeding frenzy going on in the ocean because there's a little small fish called the capelin. And the capelin come to our shores in the gazillions, and they beach themselves on the beaches. But all the animals, the birds, the whales, the marine life, the foxes and everything else that's around are coming to the beaches and feeding, so the whales are coming close to shore, and then you have the animals on the beaches. And then, of course, you have the people. The people are going crazy too because they love this little fish. And so the place is on steroids kind of thing, with nature on overload. And it's a great time of year, the summertime. The fall, of course, is beautiful here in the fall. Like today, it's 15 degrees, which we're into November. And we usually finish up around the end of November for the season for diving. And our guests anyway. And then, of course, we get ready for Christmas and so on. And then we do our marketing. And then we go all over the world marketing these dive holidays, which people can come. And from Saturday to Saturday, if they want to come for a week, or they could come longer. But we also offer a lot to the non-diver. So the non-diver can also come if they have a non-diving spouse or buddy or whatever the case may be. Our lodge can house 13 people. So we do groups of 13 weekly. up to 13 weekly. And we look after them from the day they arrive till the day they leave. And we immerse them into the, like I said, the culture, the history, the heritage, the adventure, the culinary scene, you know, and of course, the people of Newfoundland are so warm and friendly and they're characters in themselves.
Right. How badly or not have you been affected with what's going on?
We have hardly anything going on here. In all of our Atlantic Canadian provinces, there's only 11 active cases in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So 11. And we have a population of 500,000, which is not a big lot now of people. But we nipped it in the bud early. We had 250 cases, I think, at one time. And now we, I believe it's like less than 300 that we had in total of active cases in Newfoundland from last March. So we're getting away pretty good here. We're moving around the province, you know, and our government is doing a good job. They're giving us some leniency. Yes, we got to wear a mask and so on. You know, we're doing our due diligence.
Yeah.
But I tell you right now, with the other parts of Canada and what I see around the world is, you know, Jesus, shocking.
It's crazy,
I can't
isn't it?
believe it. Yeah, I don't know how long this is going to go on, but we're for our tourism part of our company, we're down 93%. But for all the other things we do, we have a sales, service, rental, you know, that's all up.
Yeah.
We have, you know, we have our local tour boats. We do charters to local businesses who take their customers out or their employees out for a day on the bay, you know. So we're down a little bit there because it's still like group travel, but we do our COVID testing and all that kind of stuff with everybody as we should, taking temperatures and asking questions and getting them to sign the COVID forms. So we're down a little bit there, but overall we're going to ride this wave okay in Newfoundland with the government subsidies, the deferral of loans and so on. It's all good here. We're going to be open for business again next year, no problem.
It's interesting that because before I spoke to you today, I had another guy on, Robbie Schmittner, and he's down in Mexico, well, in Tulum. And I asked him the same question as I do most people I have on, because a lot of them are sort of on to talk about their business and what, you know, how we can help promote that business. And more interesting for me because I want to come and dive. And I'm trying to weigh up where's best to go next as such. And he's the complete opposite. He's maybe had a handful of Americans that have come down to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, but they're just there to party, really. They're not really there, you know, to let or get back in the water. There's no subsidies whatsoever. So he's not had a paycheck since about April, nothing at all.
It's too bad.
It's hard, isn't it?
Well, my daughter, she went to work for Nautilus. I don't know if you ever heard of those guys. They go out to Socorro, right? So she went to work for Nautilus after Mike Lever, the owner of Nautilus, headhunted her right from underneath me and offered her a dream job in Cabo San Lucas. Is it Cabo San Lucas or Las Cobas, Mexico? Down to the end of the Baja there. Yeah. Cabo. Anyway, they call it Cabo. Yeah. So she went to work down there, and of course, when this all happened, they shut. And so he's been waiting to start up. And just only yesterday, I think he started up one of his boats to go out to Socorro. He's not going to Guadalupe yet. They haven't got the permits to do so. But anyway, she was out of a job. So a friend of mine from Newfoundland owns Maple Leaf Scuba in Cozumel. Now I said to my daughter, come on home, right? Come on home. We got lots of stuff here for you to do. You'll be okay. She said, Dad, I love this weather. I don't want to come home. I love it here in Mexico. I love it. So my friend who owns Maple Leaf Scuba in Cozumel heard that she was out of work over there. And so she called her up and offered her a job in Cozumel. So she's there now working 6 days a week, about 10 hours a day. and they're flat out busy
Crazy.
in Cozumel. Yeah, and most of it is Americans, right, traveling in.
That's our plan. We're supposed to go out in December for just a break in Mexico, not a dive holiday. Just going to do a couple of days, look at some bull sharks migrating and a few other things. But we're literally going for a 2-week break. We booked it last year, and we're still not sure. The flights have changed. We're still not sure if we're going to get out or not. But it'd be nice to just get some warm weather at this time of year, isn't it?
Playa del Carmen. Is that where you're going to fly into, somewhere around there?
Fly into Cancun, and then we drive down to Tulum. So it's just a bit further south than Playa del Carmen.
Oh, yeah, right on. So, well, anyway, if you make it over to Cozumel, it's only a short ferry ride from Playa del Carmen. And she's over there. Let me know if you're going that way, and she'll hook you up with some diving.
Well, what we need to do then, that will happen, Rick, I promise you. I will be in touch, because we've got plans to do some cave, sort of intro to cave kind of course, just to test the water. But the bull sharks are probably more on our bucket list of things. And if that's where she is, and after other people I've spoke to said Cozumel is where you need to go, I'll be in touch with that, definitely, 100%.
Perfect.
Right, so obviously me and you were really introduced by one of my instructors, Gary Dallas, who just lives around the corner from me, like literally we're in the same village. And it was a photograph that he took with one of the wrecks that are in, is it Conception Bay?
Yeah.
At Bell Island. And he's got a picture of him or a diver at the side of it. And it's enormous, this wreck. It's stood upright. It's pristine for how old it is. And it looked phenomenal. And through talking to him and meeting you at the dive show, we got chatting, and that's kind of been my interest for quite a while. So what can you tell me about them wrecks?
Yeah, well, the 4 wrecks, there was 2 sank in September 5th and 2 in November 2nd in 1942 by 2 separate U-boats, Ralph Rugerberg in U-513 and Frederick Wiesman in U-518. And so 2 separate U-boats. In all, 65 men lost their lives on the 2 attacks. And they were loaded down here in the bay, waiting for the convoy. And of course, when war broke out in 1939, whatever, they cut off all shipments to Germany. And Germany was one of the major buyers of this iron ore. And so what ended up happening was that come 1942, Germany was losing the war. But Hitler knew that these boats were going to the Allies, loaded down with this iron ore for the steel mills and munition factories. So he sent in the subs to interrupt the flow.
Right.
And of course, he was quite successful in sinking 4. But the subs got away. The subs came in undetected and got out undetected. And those U-boat captains, they were awarded, of course, with medals and all kinds of documents and everything else that goes with it. But you know what? I was exhibiting in a show. This guy comes into my booth. It was at the Birmingham show, October, in the early 2014, I do believe it was.
Right.
And anyway, he says, "You're not going to believe who I am." And he proceeded to tell me that he was the U-boat captain's son-in-law.
No way.
And they had him and his wife had the job of cleaning up the house, getting it ready for sale after the mother had died. The father was already dead, Ralph Rugerberg. And so anyway, they were there getting ready to do the thing with cleaning the house up and everything. And geez, next thing you know, they come across this chest of medals, of artifacts, of uniforms, of diaries, everything that he wasn't very proud of, obviously, because his daughter didn't know about it. And after the war, he ended up being the attaché living in England to Germany. So he was a diplomat, right? And his daughter was born in England. and grew up in England. And of course, he never spoke about his war days to his family so it was, when she opened up this box, it was like opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah,
you know, she felt like the bad guy, and she wasn't very proud of her father and what, and all this representative, him being a Nazi. And she had a great weight on her shoulders. And so this man was explaining all this to me. His name was Barry. And Barry was explaining all this to me, and I said, geez, and he said, we don't know what we're going to do with this stuff. And my wife, she feels so bad about it all. And I said, Jesus, I got a great idea. I said, there's this island in the middle of Conception Bay where he came and created all that havoc at that time. There was 14,000 people living on Bell Island. And now there's less than 3,000. But they got this little museum there. And it could be a great centerpiece for this museum. And so he said, geez, just tell me more. So anyway, he thought it was a great idea. He said, I'll go back and I'll mention it to Marita, and I'll see if she'd be interested in putting these artifacts in that museum, that especially the ones that were pertaining to while he was in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next year I'm back at the show, and sure enough, Barry shows up. And he says, Rick, she's reluctant, I'm sorry to say, because she feels very bad about what her father had done, and she's afraid how she's going to be represented, and she's a shy type person, and so on and so forth. And I said, well, look, I said, leave that to me. I said, because that was wartime. And I said, her father was only carrying out orders like British, Canadian, and likes. I said, and we understand that. And I said, but I'll make sure that everything is going to be kosher, and that we'll make sure that this is all done properly, and that weight that's on her shoulders is going to be lifted.
Yeah.
So anyway, year 3, I'm back at the show, and of course we've been talking a little bit over the email, and Barry shows up, and he says, Rick, he said, she's warming up to the idea. And he said, not only that, I took the diaries and I started translating them. And in the diaries, he said, there's pictures with U-boats and icebergs. And you can clearly see that it's Newfoundland, right? And he said, even one of the pictures, he said, after Rugeberg sank the Saginaga, he struck the conning tower on the Lord Strathcona, maneuvering in position. And he had to surface. And when he surfaced, he fired these torpedoes from the surface and sank the Lord Strathcona. But he said there was nobody on the boat that he sank second time, because everybody abandoned ship because they seen the first one go down in front of their eyes.
Wow.
He said, but I have the pictures of the conning tower being damaged and with Rugeberg there by and I said, oh, that's fantastic, Barry. I said, I can't wait to see him. He said, she's warming up to the idea. He said, what can you tell me? I said, I tell you what, I'm going to get a letter of invite from the museum manager and the curator, and your artifacts are going to be looked after, and you're going to be welcomed. I said, here in Newfoundland. And, I'll host you, no charge at my lodge. I'll pick you up at the airport, and I'll bring you to the museum on Bell Island. You do your presentation. So he said, well, I'll bring that back to her. So anyway, within a few weeks, I had the proper invite and so on from the museum manager, and sent it off to Barry. And then a little while after that, we were talking, and he said, this looks really good, Rick. It's very positive and so on. He said, I'll see you at the show. He said, with some good news. So I'm back again to Birmingham in October, and I'm looking forward to seeing Barry and seeing these pictures and hopefully the good news that he was going to be coming to Newfoundland. Anyway, just so happened he went off on a holiday the same time the show was, and he didn't show up at the show, and he didn't tell me he wasn't coming to the show. So every day I've been waiting for Barry to come. And I said, oh my God, it's all gone south. I can't believe it. I felt so bad. I thought I had it all lined up. So then I'm back, and in November, around the middle of November, a tube comes in the mail with a collage of pictures and of course a letter saying that we're coming next June. So they came and they presented, to the people on Bell Island, and of course, um, you know, they had a schedule of all the artifacts, and they went over it piece by piece and what it represented. And Marita would elaborate, and she would, say what a great man her father was, and there wasn't a dry eye in the place. It was so moving, and you could see the weight lifting off her shoulders. And of course, everybody welcomed them with open arms, just like we had thought they would, and reiterated to her that, listen, it was wartime, and your father wasn't a bad man. And but one of the ironic things is that for sinking a ship, of course, you would receive an Iron Cross, and Rugeberg had 2 Iron Crosses, and 2 of those Iron Crosses are now in the Bell Island Museum. And it's a very good possibility that those Iron Crosses were made from Bell Island iron ore, because they were the buyer, right? So it's a great full circle story kind of thing, and a great story. And the Barry and Marita are friends. They made new friends here, and we talk back and forth frequently.
That's great. What a sort of a good direction for your business as well, in a nice way.
It is.
Like that link between you and what you do for a living, and the history of what you're doing for a living.
It's perfect. It brings it. It's not just a dive on a wreck. It's a dive into history. And that culture on Bell Island, and the miners, and they're tough, rough, and rugged. And of course, they've had so much hardship since they closed down that iron ore mine over there. And any welcoming efforts by anybody that's trying to develop economic benefits to their little island is really rewarding for not only for them, but for anybody that's helping them out. And you can feel the warmth when you go over. And of course, our tours, everybody that come here to dive the wrecks, even if they're not a cave diver, we go to that museum and we visit the museum. We go down in these iron ore shafts, we go down there with the locals, and they tell the local stories, and how their father worked down the mines. And it's just such a family oriented tourism product that's there, an experience over there on Bell Island that fits right in with the Bell Island shipwrecks. And it just connects the wrecks to the mine, to the culture, history, heritage of everything, and of course the event.
Sorry to interrupt this episode to drop another plug for my Patreon account, but I do spend a good 7 or 8 hours producing, editing and launching each episode of this podcast, and sometimes days on the production of my YouTube videos. So to help keep this content strong and valuable to you, I'm asking that you become a sponsor and a patron of the Are You a Scuba Diver Fancy a Brew podcast. When you become a supporter, not only will you have my undying appreciation for helping support the podcast, but you'll be able to take advantage of some of the many tiered benefits that come with it, some of which includes official merchandise. If you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/fancyaBrew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. So without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, let's get onto these wrecks then, because this is what floats my boat initially. How deep, how big, and how cold?
Well, of course, it depends on what time of year you're coming, okay? So if you're coming in the springtime, you want to see the icebergs and dive with an iceberg or something like that, but you're here primarily for the wrecks. Well, you're going to be diving in water temperatures down to 0. You come in the summertime, we're talking at 100 feet. Now we're talking, anybody that's coming to dive these wrecks, there's no basic divers come to dive these wrecks. We don't welcome the basic diver unless they're coming for a training program or something like that. So everybody that come here, mostly experienced divers or technical divers. And so they're here, they're ready for it. They're, they're dressed and ready, whether they dive with their heated gear, or they dive with the fourth element gear, or they dive with a multiple of layers of assortments, this, that, and everything else. They're ready for it. and they asked the same question that you are asking right now. You know, can I expect? And you know, the waters are cold, but the hospitality is warm, is what I always tell them. But in the meantime, we have, you know, the wrecks from 0 to about 10 degrees down to 30 meters.
Yeah.
Okay. So at your safety stop, there's around 15, you know, or in the springtime, it could be anywhere between 5 and 10. In the summertime, 15. And even this time of year now, the water temperatures are 15.
That's good.
And so once they warm up, they kind of like stay like this until after Christmas, and then they start to cool off again. But the visibility, of course, we want better visibility come spring or early summer, right up until around the end of July. And then into August, we have a bit of a plankton bloom, the full moon roundabout. You get them releasing, you know, all the mussels and scallops and all the, you know, different are releasing their eggs and so on. So the visibility drops down to probably around 30 feet, I guess is probably, you know, 25, 30 feet is the worst you're going to get. And then, of course, none of the water, the waters are warmed up here, and it's in November, and the visibility, I was out there the other day, and it was close to 100 feet again.
Wow.
So it's that, the wrecks themselves. So we got the shallowest is in 30 meters. We have another one in 32 meters. We have another one in 40 meters, and we have another one in 50 meters.
Is that to the seabed?
That's to the seabed. But remember, these wrecks are 15 meters high, so you can swim all over the decks. You know, and they're all more than 130 meters, 140 meters in length. You know, they're big freighters. Yeah. They're called a 3-island style ship, if you were to search it. You know, the raised bow, raised stern. Yeah. And then you got the midsection where the bridge is to, with cargo holds aft and forward of the bridge. So, but these wrecks, you know, they're upright, they're intact, big torpedo holes in the side of them, full of marine life, and lots of unexplored holes, and lots of artifacts there to see. And there's great photo opportunities, as you see with Gary Dallas's bow shot. Well, that same wreck has a prop still on it. You know, you can swim through the rudder plates. You know, swim through between the rudder plate and the shaft, and the prop is there, and it's amazing photography. And you know, but it's also an amazing experience. And we have something for everyone at all levels, as long as they're advanced enough to come and experience this. And we have everything you can think of in regards of, you know, different cylinder sizes. We have the H valves, we have the twin sets, we have the side mounts, we have the deco bottles, bailout bottles, we have rebreather bottles, we have, you know, softener line, we're ready for any tech diver that's coming. You don't have to worry about it. And we always do a pre-order. We make sure people, you know, who they are, what they are, and what they want. And we give them what they want, and we deliver on an experience that's like no other.
That's mega. So is there such a thing as a sort of a qualification to dive under ice? Do you need to be just experienced at diving underneath things with like no clear surface?
No. Or so there's no specialty for diving icebergs, and icebergs are very unpredictable. We've been doing it now for 20 odd years, 25, 30 years, and it's something that's is super cool in more ways than one. But it's your buoyancy, and we don't take just anybody diving on an iceberg. You've got to have at least 100 dry suit dives. You got to have experience. You know, you got to show me that you're proficient in doing this kind of dive. And we don't surface next to an iceberg, because that's where all the problems can occur. So when we go around an iceberg, our rule of thumb is we don't go any nearer to the surface than what the iceberg is in height. So everybody gets to go in the water, away from the iceberg, descend at least 10 meters, swim to the iceberg, have your experience with the iceberg, and then of course, depends on which way the current and the flow and the wind and everything else. People need to know their navigational skills as well, because I want to pick you up so that that iceberg is continually drifting away from us when you're surfacing. And then I'm picking you up, and we got no worries about drifting towards that iceberg, and that iceberg, a possibility would crash and tip over the boat, and it's all over for us. But it is. I don't consider it dangerous as such, but there's a limit to you got to do that equation. The time that you're down, and you limit your time, your experience there, and just do what you do and have a great dive. And then of course we could chip off a bit of old iceberg off a bergy bit and bring it back to the house and have it in our screech, our Newfoundland rum. So it's but no, you don't surface next to an iceberg, and if it did roll then, or if it did crack, you're protected by the water column.
I get it. So I suppose it's much like anything. If I were on a Red Sea liverboard now to dive a wreck out there, let's say the Thistlegorm or something, the diving operation I'm with give me a set of parameters to dive to. How long you can be down, how close, and how much penetration or not, or deco and everything else. That's only the same. It's just a set of safety measures that you'll implement through us.
Exactly.
Innit? Are they quite noisy? I've heard they are.
They'll crack, right? But if they crack and crash, and they are really noisy, you can go on YouTube, and there's a lady, Miranda. We had an iceberg 2 kilometers away from us, and she was diving on the wrecks, and it just so happened she was filming on the wrecks with a GoPro. And then when she reviewed her film after, she heard the iceberg crash. But when she downloaded and listened and looked at her film, she couldn't believe, how noisy it really was.
Really? Wow.
So yes, they are quite noisy if they start cracking. And it gives you that feeling in your chest that, it's like, oof, it's a big
wild animal.
Loud and it's like you just want to swim away from it.
Well, speaking of big,
for everybody, you gotta have experience, and we've had icebergs crash over the years, and nobody's got hurt because they listened to our protocols, and it's a tricky situation, but it's a great experience.
Cool. Well, speaking of great big wild noisy loud animals, you also get a chance to get in with the whales as well. You do like a snorkeling safari thing, don't you, with them?
We do the ocean safari, we call it, and it's swimming with the humpback whales. It's actually the humpback whales swim with us because they have much bigger fins than we have. And but we go out around the areas where they're in the bays, and they're probably relaxing, or they might be over around having a feed or something like that. And then if you're in the water, usually the calves are a bit curious, and so the calves will come around and check you out. And then the moms don't like, the cows don't like the calves running off too far, especially around strangers. So then they'll come and make sure that the calf is all right, and then you'll get to see the humpback whales swimming around you. But all the while you're swimming in this water column, like there's capelin, there's other fish in the water. Could be mola we've experienced, or could be the big lion's mane jellyfishes, or moon jellies, and so it's there's a lot of life under the surface that we don't see. But if you're snorkeling, and where the whales are too, they're there because they're feeding, and there's usually a lot of life because of what
Right.
they're feeding on. Others are feeding on it as well.
Right. Well, I don't want to break away from the ocean too quick, so I'll ask the question now. I was going to do it later, but obviously the reason I started what I'm at now, and I said to you before, I approached Northern Diver because they did a heated vest and whatnot. Is there any tricks or tips you could offer me, who's somebody who struggles keeping warm in the water? I have a dry suit, dive it all year round. I have multiple layers. I've just bought a really expensive hood. I've got dry gloves. I've got a heated vest. I'm still not warm enough, Rick. Help me out. What am I doing wrong?
Well, one trick is not to be cold or sweaty before you go into water, right?
Yeah.
Layer. I like layering. It works well with me. I layer fourth element gear is what I've never dove with a heated anything.
Right.
I use dry gloves, right? With usually one or two layers depending on the time of year under my gloves, and I got two different size gloves. So in the summer and in the early fall and so on, this time of year I could get away with one layer in my smaller gloves, and then in the springtime I use my little bit bigger gloves and I use two layers.
Right.
If you're diving with wet gloves or the mitts, I suggest wet mitts, and I also suggest that you wrench them a little bit tight around the wrists so that they semi-seal. You're not going to get a totally dry neoprene
Just
glove,
reducing the flush.
Yeah. Once the water gets in and your hand heats up the water, that water then becomes a thermal break. So as long as you're not exchanging that water that goes in there, so by doing a little bit of, get a Velcro strap around your wrist, or use your computer on one wrist and compass on the other wrist, make sure it goes around the wrist of the seal on the glove, and you'll find a big difference. Once that water gets in there and stays in there and warms up, it works as a thermal break. Like I say, the hoods, you want the hood fitting properly. Because if not, you're going to get the exchanges of water, and it's definitely going to give you that brain freeze that next thing you know, you're not going to know what way is up.
Well, I've just invested in a rebreather, so I'm hoping that the sort of slightly more moist and warmer breath might help me out.
That works well too. And a warm tank of air, if you go, keep it in the back seat of your car, not in the back of the truck. Yeah. When you get to the dive site, you put on your tank and you're breathing warm air rather than cold air. So it's little things like that goes a long ways. But a rebreather, definitely a warmer dive. And I'm quite comfortable in whatever time of year here we dive. I have a neoprene suit for winter time, and I have a shell suit for summer and early fall diving.
All right. Something to bear in mind then. Right, let's get on to the freshwater stuff. Back to Bell Island. I believe you can dive the mines there as well, can we?
Oh, yes. We have the Bell Island mines, which is there's about 9 square miles of flooded iron ore shafts down there, and they go out 2.5 miles underneath the ocean. So it's fresh water from springs and water that ran in from land, and it goes down 750 feet down the shaft, and then you're at the water's edge. Now there's a honeycomb of shafts, like 3.5 miles along the coast of Bell Island. And, you can go down roughly 700 to 1,000 feet anywhere at all in the four main shafts that are there. But they do have a area where it's part of a museum, and that you can go down in and you can experience, if you're not a diver, you can experience all the props and different artifacts that they got down around there from the mining days. But then, of course, when you hit the water's edge, we're down parallel to the number 2 mine shaft, which was the shaft that had 2 pipes. The one pipe would pump water out of the shaft, and the other pipe would pump air down in the shaft. And them 2 pipes go out 2.5 miles. straight out of main shaft. And so it's like a humongous goal line for those of you who are in the cave dive. And so you have those, and we have a goal line besides, of course, that you can put your finger and thumb around if the visibility gets bad, and you can do what you're trained to do to come out. But the main goal line is it goes down 1,000 feet. Now we have it going out 1,000 feet, and these mine shafts are on about a 15-degree list, if you want to, So 1,000 feet out, or 300 meters out, we're talking 45 meters deep, roughly. So it's and at that point, at that turning point that, we had Phil Short go a little bit farther than that. And he went down and explored some deeper depths, but we kind of like got that as a turning point, and there's a big steam pump right there at that turning point. And it's pretty spectacular. It's between 130, 150 feet there. And it's with a twin set on, you're going to get roughly an hour dive out of it. But you could jump off the shafts all the way down, to the north and south of you. And you can jump off and go and explore the other shafts. And we do have a circuit as well put in. So you can follow your arrows and your, so on, and come around and do it that way. But for the most part, you must be full cave certified.
Yeah. And
right now we don't do any training for cave diving or intro to cave or anything there. So when you're coming, you must be full cave certified to dive these mines as of now. But who knows what the future might bring us. We are working with RAID and also some folks with TDI from time to time, Steve Lewis and Gary, and Phil with INTD and so on. Yeah. And they're willing to help us out. They're kind of like a great ambassadors of ours, and they want Bell Island to rise higher out of the ocean, so to speak. And so they're to help whatever way they can, and they have helped a lot over the years.
Just remind me, I'm sure we've discussed this before, how do I get out to you? Clearly fly, but where would I land?
Well,
what's the transit?
I don't know what. We did have direct flights from Heathrow to St. John's. So St. John's is the capital city. It's an international airport.
Yeah.
And but we used to have flights from Gatwick, London, and Dublin.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen after this pandemic, but I'm sure that we're going to have at least one direct flight. If not, they'll probably fly into Halifax.
Yeah. That's Nova Scotia, isn't
it? And then they'll do a little jumper. Yeah, fly into Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then a little twin prop kind of plane, and then come into Newfoundland there. This is going to be a little while getting things going again. This is unfortunate how we had the ball rolling here really good. Last year was our busiest year ever. We were full from May till the end of September, basically. Every week we had just about a full house. If there wasn't a dozen people, there was at least 8. And all that. A lot of it, we gave people back their money. But a lot of people said, Rick, you know what? We'll come next year. And if we can't get it back next year, we'll see you in 2022. Yeah. And people want to travel. They want to come here, and... Are
you taking bookings for next year now?
We are taking bookings. We're really optimistic that... something got to give, whether it is a quick test or something like that, that, you got COVID or you don't, right? If you got COVID, you're going to be taken out and
shot, fed to the polar bears.
Right? where you get to go. Yeah. So right now, the worst thing is with travel is the 2-week quarantine.
Yeah.
Right? So like, for instance, I'm going to Mexico in January. But when I come back home, I got to quarantine for 2 weeks, as it is right now.
Yeah.
But with these new quick tests, I'm expecting, and I'm gambling, and I'm a gambling man, that I'm thinking I'll get the quick test, I'll have to quarantine for probably 3 to 5 days.
Mm.
And that I can live with.
Yeah.
But having to come back home when you're running a business
Tough, innit?
that's hard to take, right?
Yeah.
So if they could get something like that going, people will start to feel comfortable to fly. Yeah, you're not going to get the amounts that were flying before for a while, but you'll get people moving around, you know.
I think it's just something we need to learn to live with, isn't it? It's going to be here for a while, whether it be a year or 3.
Protection. Exactly. You know, you can protect yourself, do your due diligence and be respectful. The whole thing is, Jesus Christ, be respectful for your fellow man, you know, and wear your mask and keep your distance. And, after a while, if you're living in the same house for 3 or 4 days and everybody is kosher, well, then you can have your beer together and take a shot, whatever.
Absolutely.
But at first, be respectful. And I think the world needs to do that. And there's a lot of young people out there that they don't have this respect. And this is what's happening in the U.S. and in big cities in Canada. People are fed up with it and they don't give a damn anymore. And they're going around and they're not wearing their masks. They're not doing their social distancing. They don't care about, because they got nobody home probably that's compromised if they catches this. But they're not thinking about the other person that they might meet who do have somebody that is compromised. And then that's how it's all happening right now, and it's unfortunate that this respect is not there.
It's like they just want to fight somebody for no reason. They're almost anarchists, aren't they? Let's just say no because we can't. We've got the choice to say no, and you don't need to. Just get on with it and just be part of a society and civilization. Be civil about it.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, mate. Well, I'm going to go get me dinner. What are you going to go and do now?
I'm going for wings and beer.
Wings and beer. Is it Wings Wednesday?
Yeah, Wings Wednesday. It's 10 minutes to 4 here now.
Oh, brilliant.
And my wife and I are going over to the yacht club. They have wing night tonight.
Oh, brilliant.
So we're going over there and meeting a bunch of fellow boaters, and we'll have a few brews tonight.
Nice.
A few beers. And some wings.
That is actually a thing over here. I was down in Plymouth 2 years ago. I was down at Joint Services Dive Centre, so it's where the Army, Navy, RAF and that do all the diving.
Yeah.
I was there for a 2 week stint, and he said, we're going out for Wings Wednesday. And I'm like, what? So it was this local bar, and you literally pay, 20 pence per wing. But everyone was buying buckets of wings and just devouring them, and I didn't realize it was an actual thing. So it's cool to see that somewhere else in the world's doing it, and it was ace. I missed that.
You go ahead now, and what I like to say here is give her till you shiver.
Nice one, Rick. Nice one. Nice to see you. Man. Take it easy, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
So that brings us to an end of episode 40 with my friend Rick Stanley. Links to all the things we discussed are in the podcast notes. You've been listening to Are You a Scuba Diver Fancy a Brew podcast with me, Andy the Northern Diver. You can find more scuba related content on my YouTube channel, and the link is in the podcast notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review. And to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/Fancy a Brew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. If there's someone or something you'd like us to discuss, then let us know via our Facebook page. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.